Welcome to the Veritas Equipping Podcast, a podcast designed to provide insight, resources, and biblical wisdom. Our mission as Veritas Church is raise up mature disciples, send out everyday missionaries, glorify God. Join us as we pursue Jesus to become mature disciples and effective disciple makers for God's glory.
Veritas, welcome to our Equipping Podcast. We are in a series we're calling Gospel Issues, where we're taking some time to talk about different issues that are going on in our world that we want to look at and see through a gospel lens, and how does the gospel shape how we see it. And there are a bunch of hot topics, but if we avoid hot topics that the world is talking about, we don't do anybody any favors if the church is not talking about it. So today, we're going to talk about gender and sexuality, and we've got two elders with us, Triggs and Matthew Morken. Thanks for being on, guys.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
You're like, why did you pick me for this topic, huh?
Yeah, exactly.
That never crossed my mind.
Scott, welcome to the meat grinder.
Yeah. This is, every topic in this one is a potential landmine, because they're sensitive issues that are hit people in real life, but we want to think about them biblically. So let's just start with the controversy. What is the controversy around gender and sexuality in our culture right now?
Well, one of the things that's in the news a lot right now is just the transgender men competing in women's sports.
Yeah, I mean, is there Senate hearings on that? I mean, is it at a Congress level?
There has been. I don't know where they're at right now with it.
Yeah. But big debate online and in different talk shows on, should biological men be able to compete in women's sports and transgender?
Yeah, definitely hearing about that towards the end of some of the high school seasons and some of the competitions that are out there. That's making the news a lot. Of course, it's Pride Month. It's June. So that's where we see a lot of the rainbow flags out there. And, so-called pride being on display, put on display. So
yeah, it's really ramped up in our culture, like going back to, was it Oberfeld? The ruling for
2014
legalizing
homosexual marriage.
Which the SBC conference just happened, and I believe that there was some kind of motion to want to see that overturned, want to see the Supreme Court address that. So that issue, which seems, it wasn't that long ago, but it seems like, that was a long time, just because of the rate of social change. I mean, you think, I think Obama on his first term ran on the platform of traditional marriage. So we've come a long way since then, when you have the leader of the Democratic Party kind of advocating for traditional marriage, to now at our point where transgender issue is taking it a step further. So really a prevalent social issue, and just kind of where are people feeling the pinch and pressure in this? Do you guys think that this is an issue that's just kind of happening out there, or is this an issue that is right on our doorstep?
Man, I think it's right on our doorstep. I mean, the number of people that we have, relatives, close family members who are struggling with the confusion. I think in our church, being kind of where we're located, we experience this a number of times with folks coming to visit and having questions about where our stand is on marriage, or where our stand is with some of the LGBTQ plus questions that are out there. And honestly, when you drive through town, you see different churches. I drive past a church regularly on my way here, and it has the rainbow flag sign and says all are welcome. And, I just, so there's questions out there that are happening pretty regularly.
Yeah, I was listening to a podcast just the other day, mowing the yard, which he's a pastor in New York, and was talking about how the kind of culture or climate has changed around the issue, where he would say, like 10 years ago, to have a gay person attend his church would really lead out with the disposition of, hey, I'm gay. Is there any place for me in your church? But now he said that the disposition is more, I'm going to come and I'm going to have a boldness to judge whether you're friendly enough or not towards what I want, and just kind of there's a greater boldness from that position approaching the church. So it's a big issue we're going to talk about. And not only do you see it prevalent in our culture and on the news or debates about transgender athletes or gay marriage, but it impacts families in our church. That my son or daughter is, thinks that they're a gender that they weren't born in, or I'm related to a gay person. How do I handle this? So it's a real issue that we need to learn how to navigate as Christians. So here's a question. Why would the world describe the Christian view as hateful, but we would want to describe it as loving? So if a secular person looks at our view of, well, before we get to that one, let me just back up and say, okay, what is the biblical view of gender and sexuality, and how would we make a biblical case for that? Because we would, as a church, would say homosexuality is not God's design, and that you are the gender you were born, and that's not a mistake. So why would we say that biblically?
Yeah. It really starts in the beginning, and I think a lot of the times we get distracted by the issue and don't go to the source, and the source is God, and God is organized. God is very intentional. When you see his layout for the universe, this is the way I would come at it. When you see his layout in the universe, he made things to take care of other things. So he provided for everything's needs in the creation, and one thing kind of builds to another. The sun to rule the day, the moon and the stars to rule the night. There's this picture of authority and structure and organization that he creates. And then when you get to the end of Genesis chapter 1, you see him say in verse 26, let us make man in our image after our likeness. And so there's an intentionality with humankind that they're going to be image bearers of God. And I think Paul adds to that a bit in Ephesians 5, where he says, this picture of marriage, it's a picture of Christ and his church. So everything that we do is a shadow of something greater, but everything that we do is a picture of how God is taking care of his creation, creating order and structure. And even within the home, there's order and structure of a head and of a submitting role. And
so you can go to creation order and
absolutely.
This is the way that God intentionally designed it, and this is how humans flourish in marriage and families and reproducing to fill the earth. Any other places you would go scripturally?
Well, just to continue on with Genesis, he did say that he created them in his image, but also he created them male and female, and I think that's key in that both gender roles and homosexuality, and he talks about the importance of multiplying and just
you do see a downward spiral in depravity. So Romans 1 addresses homosexuality, but as it gets to the end of the chapter, it talks about not only will people do what is wrong, they'll celebrate what is wrong. They'll take and to feel like there was a time in our culture not that long ago where we recognized an issue of gender dysphoria, and we would have compassion on people. There's some confusion and hurt, things that we need to address with some counseling. But we went from how do we help these people navigate this to if you're a man who dresses like a woman, you're now a hero who's super brave.
Absolutely.
So it's that's a big change in our culture. Yeah,
you have it in the big book of psychology. It's not called that, but I believe in 1985 that print had homosexuality listed as a mental illness or an illness. I'm not saying that to be offensive. It was just how it was. And so
in a
then you have
such psychology book.
Yeah, secular psychology, a godless book, where they're trying to wrestle with why are people different? Why do they respond this way? And so going from that to where you have, it's past neutral. It's not recognized now as an issue, but it's celebrated and broadcast. We have a whole month that's really committed to it. We have a flag that's on a lot of our government buildings now that represents this movement that's gone from sickness to celebration.
Yeah. And Paul lists homosexuality as a list of sins. Like this isn't right. I think there's been some textual gymnastics in our culture to try to like take our cultural situation and reform Paul's words to better fit that of like, well, what he's talking about is men with boys or different things. It's like, I think in the law of Moses for Paul, if there's a man that wants to marry another man, they're not going to be like, oh, yeah, that's okay. That's not what I meant. I mean, there's a clear, like, we're trying to just take words and fit it into our cultural situation.
It wasn't foreign to Paul. In the Roman Empire, like, this homosexuality was happening. He was addressing homosexuality, men with men. Certainly there was men with boys and stuff like that. But men with men was confronted. Homosexuality was confronted. It wasn't foreign. It wasn't something that just showed up on the horizon in 1980 or after the years of love of the 60s and 70s. Like this has been an issue.
And Paul tells us, in his letter to Timothy, that there's going to come a time when people are going to want to find teachers that tell them what their itchy ears want to hear. Like, justify my sin for me biblically. So to hold the ground is a challenging thing in our culture.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So, there's a lot of perversion of the gospel and what try to word it such that they can support their stance in that. And
so why would a secular person who's looking at the church, who says that homosexuality is a sin, says that you are the gender you were born in, why would they look at that stance and make a conclusion that that's hateful? Like, before we kind of defend that it's loving, why would they make, if we had to best represent that viewpoint, why are they coming to the conclusion that we're unloving to people?
I mean, so it's always hard, whether you're young, whether you're old, I think it's hard to hear somebody challenge your position. What I think adds to the issue with the sexual debate is it's such an issue that claims identity. So unlike theft, no one runs about, right? No one runs about being like, I'm a thief, I'm a thief, I'm a thief. Like nobody does that.
Sure.
I'm sure there are
some. So to say
out there.
Stealing is wrong isn't like you're attacking who I am.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so when you have somebody who's claimed an identity that isn't what was given to them at birth, like this issue seems to be so much more personal than any other issue out there. I can't think of any other sin that somebody would claim and name as their identity, as their image, right? And so then you have the reasonable defenses. I don't like to hear when you tell me something I don't like to hear, and so you have this thing where, and it's so based on their heart, their soul, or who they view their image as.
Yeah.
And honestly, again, like you have Romans 1 living out, like some of these people are surrounded by an army of people that are just saying like, you go, you do this, you're awesome, And so then the one person or the one entity, this church, tells me that my friends are all wrong and that this thing that I'm feeling or I'm confused about is wrong. That is so offensive. And I think that's what drives it in my mind.
Yeah. And there is a distortion of love. In the secular world today, love is supporting me in whatever I'm doing. And why can't you support me? And if you don't support me, you're not loving me. Which is, we wouldn't apply that everywhere. Like, we don't want to support people in doing things. We're not be like, I would want to become a serial killer. Why can't you just support me in that? Yeah. We wouldn't say like, we're not being loving. Like, to really love somebody is want what's best for them. But that's how it's viewed. To love somebody is to affirm them no matter what, to support them no matter what. So that's how I think it's interpreted as you're not loving me in that. So, but we would say we are.
Yeah.
So
absolutely.
why do we say that our stance is loving people?
I would say from a Christian standpoint, we desire to see everyone in a right relationship with God, and living in sin, no matter what that sin is, it separates them from that relationship with God that they
we want what's best for them, and what's best for them is to live in a right relationship with their maker.
Yeah,
absolutely.
And I think that's where it gets convoluted, because people are drowned in their feelings. They're drowned in their culture. Their 40 closest friends are encouraging them to do this. And so then when you come in and you present a different argument or truth, and you're saying that this is truth, that becomes so offensive. But I would argue that most of us have done it. If you've been able to have children, you know, your 2-year-old wants to run out in the street. And again, these folks aren't 2-year-olds, but just hear the idea here, right? Is that I love my 2-year-old. I don't want them to get hit by the bus. Mm. Don't go in the street. And so I might yell at them. I might pounce. Sure. I'm going to do things. I'm going to speak truth to them. Like, you will perish if you're in the street, and I'm going to call them back. And so I think in some ways, and I think some Christians have done it poorly. Sure. Let's recognize that. But also it's like, hey, you're running in the street, and the way this leads to death.
Yeah, and I like, it's not so, it is a debate on what's right and what's wrong and where truth comes from, but it's also an issue of where contentment, joy, satisfaction comes from. So we're saying that's not going to make you happy. That's not going to lead to the most flourishing. That's not going to deliver what you think it's going to deliver, because it's outside of your maker's will. And this way may be hard. You may have to die to yourself and your own desires and things you think you want, but this is what's really going to satisfy, not that. And I think that's why, even if you disagree with us, what I would hope you'd understand is, but this is us trying to love you.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And that's really hard, again, when you're on the other side of the stick. So I got a question for you guys. Do you think, so a lot of the talk is gender confusion. Do you think that, is that a real thing? Can we in our society today be confused about it, genuinely?
Can we be confused? Yes, there's confusion everywhere. So are you saying, like, do we believe in genuine gender dysphoria? Like somebody can...
Yeah. Because that stuff is just out there. So, like, when I have a relative or family member or friend talking about this dysphoria...
I think... in what exists in a very minority thing has gotten blown up. I forget the statistics of, is it Gen Alpha is the most, or the Gen Z maybe? Like the percentage of people that would identify as transgender or in the LGBT, it's like this, it's skyrocketed because of, one, you get some social credibility if you're in one of those groups. So it's a way to be, like, now you have a girl that likes to play with trucks, and then you got a mom who's telling a 3-year-old, well, maybe you're a boy. Yeah. Gender. So our society's introducing more confusion. So do I think gender dysphoria as a mental illness exists? Yes, on an extremely rare level. Sam's given me what? Gen Z. Okay, Sam, thanks for the help. Born, do you guys know when Gen Z is?
I don't know. I was trying to think of that.
1997 to 2004 had the highest percentage of age of those identifying as transgender at 1.9%. Millennials born 81 to 96 had a transgender identification rate of 1%, while Gen X, baby boomers, 0.3%. So, yeah, it's continuing. Wait, yeah.
That's by year.
By year.
So look at the right side.
Oh, okay. So, yeah, in 2012, it was at, I don't even know what percentage. If I could read charts, this would be helpful. But it jumped up to 20.8% in a matter of 5 years.
Yeah.
In Gen Z. So there's a social acceptance and pressure to be like, this is cool now. I'm in a select group and I have an identity. So for your question, I think it can exist on a real low level. I mean, there are people who are born with both body parts.
Yep.
And then you've got to make a decision like in there. But I don't think gender is fluid. I don't think it's a social construct. I think it's a biblical thing that you're designed. Men and women are different, and that difference is more than just body parts.
Yes.
If a female has breast cancer and has her breast removed, she's no longer a female.
Right.
And if a man, has breast implants, that doesn't make him a female. Like you're more than body parts.
Amen.
It's down to your design.
Yeah.
And I think the confusion has been introduced at a crazy rate.
Yeah.
I mean,
that's where I think the tizzy, like when you're in that tizzy of like, what if, that's where I was wondering about what you thought on confusion. Scott, what's your take on the confusion? Do you think it can be there, or?
I think those statistics are pretty obvious that it's a very small percentage, but there's just been society has just really pushed the issue and just created a lot of confusion, especially in kids
Go ahead. I'm sorry.
That is not something God designed at all.
The craziness when you're kind of looking at our society, like things have happened fast. Like there was a time it's like, should we allow gay marriage? Yep. Okay, now you're saying like, wait, we're having men dress up as women to go to libraries to read books to kids?
Yeah.
Or drag shows where you're seeing toddlers put $1 bills in a guy's, Speedo, like it was like, how did he? This is different. So there's not only that, it's like a sexual perversion.
Yeah, like what's interesting about the media is they still censor some of the words that go out, but these ideas just can free flow with no editing whatsoever. Yeah. Let alone those instances where you have this person coming in to read books to children, absolutely pagan.
So. The most vast majority of people listening to this podcast are going to be like, yes, I'm with you, but what do I do about it? Like, what counsel would we give people in our church to navigate? It's like, my son or daughter is, questioning their gender, or my brother or sister is a homosexual, or I work with somebody. Should I use their preferred pronouns? Or my relative is gay and getting married. Should I go to that wedding? So I know I just threw a lot of situations out here. Let's pick a few of those and be like, what counsel would we give a Christian on how to navigate that? You pick. Dealer's choice. What do you want to talk about first? Give me an issue.
I was going to pass it off to Scott and just delay as long as possible.
Okay, I'll give it. You work with somebody, or your neighbors with somebody who is used to be Steve and now is Sally, and do you call him Sally? Do you say her? Do you say him? What should you do?
That's something I haven't experienced yet, but I think it's wrong to address somebody in a way that wasn't God's design for them, and I guess personally,
if you have a culture that's saying, "Why don't you just love this person?" They're asking to be called Sally or her. It's disrespectful, dead naming. You're not being very kind or considerate. Like kind and considerate, those are terms as Christians we want to be kind, we want to be considerate. So, or you can go to the end of hey, there's a lot of issues. I don't want to die on this hill. So I want to get to more important things. How would you think through that? I think it's got to lead to conversations. We've met with a couple of folks who are struggling with this too, and I think, we sat down and honestly, I was pretty nervous about the whole conversation. Like, how's this gonna, play out for the church as a whole? And super nervous about it. And I think we sat down and we listened to their story, and I think both their stories were terrible, gruesome, filled with sexual abuse and just horrendous responses to some of the situations in their life. So everybody has a story. So when Steve comes to me and says,
hey, I want you to call me Sally. I hope I have enough of a relationship with them to be like, hey, like, can we do coffee? I just want to talk about your pronouns. I want to talk about who you are. And I think I have to come back as a Christian to presenting the truth in love, right? I know Steve. I know what's brought him to this point and place. And, I know HR departments aren't into that. And I know that some companies would frown on that too. But when the person is not pushing an agenda, but we can push a relationship, that my relationship is going to involve Jesus Christ, I got to go in and have those conversations. I think, for the most part, no, I wouldn't like to, cave to some of those things. But also, I wonder if I'm in good relationship with them, how much it matters. And these are things I wrestle with. I haven't come down on this. I'm really grateful I work at a church. But
our people don't. I think it's tough
don't.
when we work in a church. We're in this bubble, and our people are on the front lines in so many situations.
You're out there doing it, and that's where I think like leaning into relationship. And I think some of this, the trouble is too, like a lot of. So my perception is a lot of people come at this with an agenda. And I'm not interested in your agenda. I'm interested in who you are as a person, and I'm willing to have this chat. And I don't know that all of us are willing to. But I just think some of us kind of maybe cop out with this idea of like, well, I wouldn't do it, but I don't really give a hoot if they do. And it's like, no, you're a representative of truth in the marketplace. Like you are an everyday missionary representing an ambassador, representing a greater king. And these folks are under this king as well, whether they like it or not, or whether they'll acknowledge it or not. So to say like, well, I wouldn't do it, but I'll support him or her doing it, kind of in whatever, and I'll just avoid the conflict. I think I've got bad news for you.
Sure. I think you'd be surprised how much communication you can have with somebody without using pronouns or
Absolutely
names.
Right. Yeah.
So I wouldn't try to just make it a confrontational issue. Yeah. But I also don't want to play the game where they've defined the rules of what love is and what isn't.
Exactly.
And I have to play by your definition of love. I want to play by the definition of love given by God in His Word, and love rejoices in the truth.
Yes, absolutely.
So if I enhance a lie to you, I'm not loving you.
But that's where I would argue that you are participating in the lie. You are being Adam leaning on the tree while your wife is deceived by the serpent. Yeah. And so you are sitting in the office cubicle. And I mean, Hebrews 13:17 says it is a fearful thing to fall into the hand of a mighty God. It is a fearful thing to fall into the hand of a mighty God. Yeah.
And so 17 is about your leaders.
17 is maybe about the elders. Maybe it's Hebrews 10:17. I will look it up. But to say to your coworker and just have a genuine care, not
12.
for their love life.
Now I'm like, what is it? 12:17.
It is 12.
The Bible trivia. Here we go. Did I just do the Batman theme song? The Bible trivia. Was that it, Sam?
There are so many things happening right now at the exact same time. So it's Hebrews 10. 26 says, for if we go on sinning deliberately after receiving the knowledge of the truth, there's no longer remains a sacrifice for sins. And then if you read on further, it says,
a fearful expectation of judgment and a fury of fire that will consume the adversaries.
So correction to all that, Hebrews 10:31, it is a fearful thing to fall into the hands of the living God.
Yeah.
And so I think Christians have this bad habit of just being like, we're going to stone you, you're going to hell. And right now you're not. And I'm the missionary that's in front of your face. So I should probably figure out a way to sit down, have a diplomatic conversation with you. And again, I think when it comes down to the conversation, I know that jobs are on the line.
Okay, how about you're friends with somebody and they're in a gay relationship and they're getting married and they invite you to the wedding. And we may disagree. I think good and godly Christians might approach this differently, but let's kind of talk it out. How can somebody think biblically on this issue? You go to the wedding, you don't go to the wedding. What do you do?
Well, I think in a situation, if you did get invited to a wedding, that you need to go to God in prayer about it and ask for His direction. Maybe look for some godly counsel from people, leaders in the church, or whatever that may be.
That's a great. Hopefully, we don't disagree on that part. It'd be like, yes, pray, godly counsel, first place to start. That's wonderful.
I've experienced this in the past, and I did that, and I was led to talk with them about what God says marriage is between a man and a woman, and that I do not believe that, nor does the Bible support gay marriage at all, and I just asked if that's something they still wanted me to attend. They did. I told them that, I wanted them to understand that in no way was it supporting something that isn't biblical.
So you did. You said, in no way I'm supporting
it. Oh, yeah. And
so you attended the wedding, but you made it really clear.
But I said that I would be attending out of love for them, and
kind of in an effort to maintain the relationship.
Yes, yeah. I didn't want to ruin a relationship of a family member. Sure.
But you were up front with where you stood and what
absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean, they knew exactly where I stood, and it wasn't a big argument about it at all.
Sure.
I didn't know where it was going to go.
Yeah. So you put it in their hands.
I did. I put it in their hands, and they asked that I would attend. So I did attend. But I think each case is different.
Sure.
And
good on you, Scott.
Had there been a different response,
it would have been them telling you not to come.
Yeah. I mean, that's...
I love the clarity in that. I think a lot of people that face this issue, one question that I would pose, they don't do this at weddings anymore, but there used to be a common question like, is there anyone here that objects to this, union? It's like, if the minister asked that question, would you object? And if not, like that can put you in an awkward position, because it's a celebration. So that what makes it hard. It's I would have an easier time having the gay couple over to my house for dinner and let's talk and let's have a relationship and than I'm going to go and celebrate something you're doing. But in your case, you made it really clear, like, hey, I'm not celebrating this, but I want you to show that I still want a relationship with you.
Yeah. I love the conversation you had with them. I mean, again, I think that's key. It's easy I would rather just check out and be like, well, I'm done with you. Disconnect, disengage. Hey, I don't like conflict, so bye. And, but I think having that conversation where you could engage at that level over something so serious is beautiful. I would lean towards personally, one, needing to have that conversation. I'd lean towards not going, and then trying to communicate. Like, I don't know if you'll notice I'm not there, which is fine, but I do want you to know if you think about it, there's a bigger problem here.
Sure.
And trying to do that too. And I would again stress to all our folks too, like that is not the biblical covenant of marriage. So it doesn't exist.
Right. Yeah. Mm-hmm. So let's do this issue. Let's say there's a family in our church and they got a 5-year-old boy who really loves to play with his sisters and comes to his mom and dad and says, hey, I think I'm a girl. How do you counsel a parent? How should a parent handle that?
I wouldn't be afraid of it. I mean, I think there's a couple dynamic times in life developmentally, and it's probably around the ages of 3 to 5, and then again for boys probably around the ages of 10 to 14, where there can be some dicey or just some vulnerability with who am I. The ages are pretty much the same for gals, a little bit different, but anyways, just to lean into that, lean into the conversation. And again, I don't think masculinity is I play with trucks all the time, or I play with cars, or for gals, I play with dolls. I mean, I know some women who love to weld, and they would do a better job on my cultivator than most guys would. You know what I mean? But I think we should start having conversations about masculinity and femininity. And I mean, there's more to it than only, again, just body parts. There's calling by God. And so I think I would argue at the heart of all the sexual dysfunction and homosexuality is a discontentment with who God has made me to be and God's plan. It's not a sex issue or an image issue. It's you have an issue with the Creator, and you're thinking that He has failed you, and you're taking a shortcut to make up for His lacking. That is at the heart of it, I believe. And so when you go, you hear your child say that, I think you can say like, no, you're not. And let me explain why. Now, I think there's physical proof in body parts that also adds to the case too. But there's a calling as a man. There's a calling to be potentially a father or a leader or something like that. There's a calling as a wife and a mother that is a good, godly thing, fulfilling thing. Yeah. And it's an uphill battle against culture the whole way. But it is what we're called to do. And so I might not feel it, but it's the best thing for me. And even if it involves me wrestling, I'm okay. I believe firmly that some can wrestle with their gender and their identity, maybe until the day they die. And when they get into heaven, they will have a reward for fighting the fight. Fighting the fight.
What are your thoughts, Scott?
I think with the young kids, I think it's important that we celebrate their gender, that God made them who they are. And, as far as a boy coming to you and saying that I like playing with the girls, that's it's not a red flag to the point where you should encourage them to consider being a girl. I just think that, like Matthew said, it's we just need to be upfront with them about who they are and who God made them.
I think the pressure that parents feel in our society can really mess with a kid and add confusion if they respond to that in a like, well, let's maybe you are. You're just gonna. I mean, there's a good part of like, no, you're not. You're a boy. God made you a boy. It's okay. You have a lot of sisters. You like to play with them. It doesn't make you a girl. And just brush it off. And kids are learning and developing. Absolutely. And to add to confusion, you can bring clarity in that moment, and they'll just, oh, okay, Mom said I'm going to play. Or you can really compound confusion in that.
And I would take it a step further. I mean, there are different seasons where your child might have different tics, and you challenge the tics, whether they be squinting or doing something with their neck. If you seem like, I think boys should be challenged to not be effeminate, and some will be more effeminate than others, and that's fine, not unlike a girl who loves to weld and a guy who loves to cook. Praise God. Yeah. Let's do it. But I think the challenge is to be like, you've been doing this for a few days now. Like, don't talk like that, or don't. I think you can practically challenge somebody in that as well. I think you can speak into that and without tearing them down or embarrassing them or anything along those lines too. I think that's. It's part of growing up. Yeah. It's part of growing up and taking instruction from parents.
And it is development. When you hear, I feel like I'm in the wrong body, there's a sense of like, well, everybody is. We're in a sinful body. And we put things to death in us to be conformed to the image of Christ. So it's not just a gender issue. It's a sin issue of all of us are born in a body that needs to die and be made new. And we're being transformed from one glory to another, beholding Christ. So I think that there's a sense of, you're in the wrong body. You're in a sinful body.
Almost in the sense of the tent, right? The tent, it's wearing down, it's breaking down like, I don't feel right here. Yeah. Because you belong to a God, a creator who has another place for you to be, and in that place you'll be in his presence. And there you will feel truly complete.
And and that's the end. I think everybody's like, well, I'm trying to find fulfillment. Yeah, but you're not going to do it here in this. Like, it's in your creator. Yeah. Let's pursue him. Yep. And it's a narrow road. It's hard. It's uphill.
You won't find it in wealth either, or pride, or the job, or you won't find it in being a father of kids or a father of a wife either. It's still out there, and it's in Christ Jesus, the greater father and brother that we have.
And I think that we did a series a while ago on sacred gender. I think that there's gender confusion in the world because there's gender confusion in the church too. It's not just a sexual thing. It's just like if our secular society doesn't know what it is to be a man or a woman, it's because our church doesn't know what it means to be a man or a woman biblically, not just biologically, but biblically. What does it mean to be a man or a woman? So I would say, like, what is beyond body parts and reproduction? What does it mean to be a woman biblically, and what does it mean to be a man biblically, and to celebrate both of those as good things for our flourishing, which is largely absent in church world. I think it's just you treat an individual as an individual, you lean into their interests, their passions, and not their design. But you're going to find fulfillment in your design as God designed it.
And I would take it a step further, is it's not so much about their passions and their giftedness and taking a step past their design. It's about their designer. The designer laid it out. Because I have feelings this way. Christ had feelings before he went to the cross. Hey, if it's possible, can we let this cup pass from me? Not my will, but your will be done. And I mean, I think that's the challenge in some of the dysphoria and some of the chaos. And even if you're wrestling with your role as a gender of like, man, I'm struggling with who you created me to be, your will be done.
Yeah.
And submitting to the Lord. Like, the thing is in your birth, God did not make a mistake. It is, you might wrestle with this, but the attack is on who he is and what he chose to do. You were knit together in your mother's womb, and it's not unintentional. And so in your wrestling too, that's probably has to do so much more with your sanctification. Like, are you going to lean into God, or are you going to do this your way?
Yeah.
And the created can't say to the creator, why did you make me like this? That's not how it works. I mean, I guess you can. You can ask all you want.
Sure.
But it's done.
Yeah. Or a misapplication or understanding of life situations. I was listening to someone talk that were saying, well, God's not going to give me these abilities and these opportunities and not want me to do them. I'm like, yeah
absolutely.
Like, if it violates his word and what he's called you to and what season of life, whatever, you certainly would have opportunities you should say no to. And you certainly are going to have things you're good at. That doesn't mean you should do them. Like, so.
And it's hard too, because I think in the church we struggle with male leadership. We struggle with submission, and we cringe for those words. We think about complementarianism and egalitarianism and shy away from some of those like God-given roles. Like even in the church, sometimes it can be looked down to be a mother. And so you're a mother of 2 or you're a mother of 10. And so, and we get creeped out about that. Yeah. And here you have a biblical calling by God. God's designed to be a role as a husband, leader of the home and in the church, and as a submissive wife in the home and in the church who leads the home, and we don't like to talk about that either.
Right. And I think because in our society we've elevated success in career, and that's the pursuit, and we've devalued the family. And there's nothing better you can do than to have a good family, to raise kids, and but that's seen lesser than our society. So if I really want to be somebody, I got to get outside of the home and be successful there. And that's just a lie we've bought into.
It's a lie. We've just hook, line, and sinker. We've bought it. And I think that's creating, because I wonder, the church is to represent Christ on this earth as ambassadors and as, its giftings as, as a body of Christ. And so I think some of the people outside look at us and we're as confused or shy about it, and they're just taking steps that we won't take.
Yeah. I think it's shy led to confused, because in my experience, it's more people, it's like, well, I know it, but I can't really say that.
Right.
That sounds crazy. And then a group of people never say it, and then you have the next generation that are just really confused about it.
Well, and I think we've done it poorly too. We've gone through a season where, male headship was dictatorship, and submission was servitude and slavery, and certainly brutal. But people have done it poorly, and it doesn't mean we should negate it. Masculinity has been done poorly. It doesn't mean we should walk away from biblical truth and masculinity. Submission has been done poorly, and it doesn't mean we should walk away from it. And cars have been in car accidents, but I still drive a car.
Yeah.
And it's been brutal. Like, how do we do it better? Like, how do we present a more biblical viewpoint where we're proud of biblical masculinity? How do we present present a biblical view of submission and being a wife and a mother that is awesome, because it is awesome.
And I think Generation Z is experiencing the failed promises of feminism. Like
Absolutely.
It did not deliver everything that it promised, and they're looking for meaning and purpose and value, and we got to go to God's word for that. So, what are some resources that, hey, if you want to read more about this, where would you point people?
I think there's pastors that have given excellent sermons that are a good place to go to. I think of John Piper and Vodi Bachman are a couple that I've listened to recently that
They'll address it head on.
Yeah, they address it head on, but I also think there's a concern of the false teachers out there, and that a lot of times people will hear somebody and they go, "Oh, that sounds reasonable," but they can't go back to the Bible and back up what this guy's saying.
Yeah. So. I think of if you want a big overview of our cultural situation, it's The Rise and Triumph of the Modern Self by Carl Trueman. The book starts off with the sentence of the statement, "I'm a man trapped in a woman's body," would not have computed or made sense at all 30 years ago. But today, that's a common sentence. So the whole premise of the book, and it's a thick book, is how did we get to that point? And he goes into Freud and Nietzsche and kind of secularism and the individual is the highest authority, which then that shapes truth. And if I feel that way, it must be true. So it's a fascinating book on just kind of...
What was that book
It's
again?
The Rise and Triumph of the Modern Self. Do we have that in the bookstore, Sam? No, it's a thick one. But it's good. I think each chapter kind of has a summary of it. And he's done some podcasts and articles that kind of sum up his premise. But that's a wonderful book. God and the Transgender Debate is a good one.
Yeah.
And then Is God Anti-Gay?
Yeah,
And that's like a little booklet.
Yeah.
Are any of those in the bookstore, Sam?
We don't have any of those right now. We have in the past.
We have in the past. Maybe we'll get some of those out there. This podcast, I don't know when this podcast comes out. I think in June, but maybe we can try to have some of those books available. If not, just what do you?
It's a parent resource, the God's Design for Sex series.
Oh, God's Design for Sex series, kind of books to go through with your kids, and they're kind of with different ages in that.
Yeah,
oh, sweet.
Really
is that in the bookstore?
We don't have it right now.
I'm not doing it,
But we will.
but we will.
We need more space.
Right.
Find more books.
You can find all these on Amazon. So those are wonderful books. There's another one, 5 Lies of Our Modern Age by Rosaria Butterfield, which she's got a wonderful testimony.
Great testimony.
Just about she was a practicing lesbian for a lot of her life before she came to Christ, and she addresses some things head on in that book. 5 Lies of, is it the Modern Age? 5 Lies of the Modern Age.
There's several good books out there.
5 Lies of Our Anti-Christian.
Oh, 5 Lies of Our Anti-Christian Age. Thanks.
There's a lot of books out there of people that had led a homosexual lifestyle and either someone challenged them on that, and they went to the gospel and decided that what they were doing was wrong, or I think there was one gay girl, good God, or something.
I had that one down.
I believe
Jackie Hill Perry.
If I remember right, I think she just one night, she just decided that she needed to go to the Word and just felt convicted that what she was doing was sinful.
Yeah.
And
the book I have added, if you really want a huge read, and this is no joke, there's a smaller version of it, but you have Biblical Manhood and Womanhood by Grudem and Piper.
Yeah.
And that is a monstrous book, but I mean,
there's a smaller one that
is a pamphlet-y size one, like 50
questions about biblical manhood, which is really, and then there's one of what does it mean to be a man or what does it mean to be a woman? That's smaller, but the big one is
super comprehensive because especially for some of you who swim in the public system, it just comprehensive. It isn't just about, again, body parts. Like there's this whole purpose behind God's creation, and it kind of looks from Genesis to Revelation and just really picks apart, there's just more to it than feelings and
for sure.
There's purpose and intentionality in God's sovereign plan.
Yeah. And it's not just that, hey, you're wrong and you need to realize that. It's like there's something better that we're called to that is fulfilling. And God designed it, and he knows what he's doing.
Amen.
And he can be trusted. So, Veritas, hopefully this conversation was helpful in navigating some of these things, or at least stirred up some questions to point you in some trusted resources that will further your study, and not just further your study, but further your passion for our Creator and living a life that honors him. Love you.